I never imagined I'd own a soccer team. How a serendipitous encounter built an empire. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. My heart raced as I stood in the crowd, the stadium pulsating with energy. Tears filled my eyes. I could feel the weight of the moment. They asked, "Who's going to save us?" The fear in their voices struck me like a bolt of lightning. I wasn't ready for the chaos, but sometimes fate grips you tighter than your own plans. I was just a struggling dreamer, navigating life in a town that felt too small. My best friend, Jamie, always nudged me to chase bigger aspirations. "One day we'll make it," he said, his eyes sparkling with hope. I could feel his unwavering faith, yet life was cruelly unkind. The bills piled up. Each no from potential investors hit harder than the last. The dream of owning a soccer team flickered like a candle in the wind. But on that fateful day, everything changed. A stranger approached me, eyes glinting with something unexplainable. He knew too much about me. My pulse quickened. "You have what it takes," he said, a sly grin spreading across his face, as if he held the universe's secrets. He tossed a ball my way, and in that moment, I felt a connection stronger than anything I'd ever known. We wandered through the bustling streets, the sounds of laughter and sirens blending. I listened intently as he spoke of hidden opportunities. The world felt surreal, arrows of undeniable fate pointing the way. Soccer? A team? It seemed impossible, but the thrill danced on the tip of my tongue. With every shared laugh, a ghost of possibility shimmered before us. But who was he? Why was this happening now? The questions lingered like shadows, preventing me from fully embracing the serendipity before me. Every detail was intoxicating. The grass beneath my feet buzzed with electric anticipation. An empire could rise from the ashes of my dreams. But at what cost? The thrill of chasing a dream blurred the line between possibility and despair. I could feel the weight of my choices. Every step forward felt like a leap into the unknown. "Trust the process," he said, his voice sinking deep into my heart. "This is just the beginning." Just as hope flickered, a scream pierced the air. The atmosphere shifted, and suddenly, the strangers surrounding us morphed into figures of concern. Eyes darted, hearts quickened. A white rabbit darted across the street, and as everyone turned to see, he vanished as quickly as he appeared. My breath caught. What was happening? I needed answers. Was this stranger a gateway to my dreams or a harbinger of doom? Hey! Before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon, and while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. I stood frozen, an invisible barrier wrapping around me as the world spun in chaotic disarray. The echoes of excitement that had once enveloped me felt distant and muted. Jamie's laugh, which had always been my anchor, was swallowed by the whispers of fear that surged through the crowd. I turned to my mysterious companion, searching for solace in his eyes, but found only a steely glint that unsettled me. "Stay close," he said, his voice barely rising above the commotion. He grasped my shoulder, grounding me as danger raced through the air. I wondered, who was he really? A guardian angel or a storm poised to unleash fury? My mind tangled with possibilities, each thought leading to more questions. As people shifted and moved away from the panic, I caught sight of an elderly woman near a vendor stall. Her basket was overturned, scattering oranges across the pavement. Without hesitation, I stepped away from the chaos, my instincts driving me to help. The woman noticed me and smiled through the shock, her warmth breaking through my swirling dread. "Thank you, dear," she said, her voice soft yet strong. "It's just oranges, but they feel heavy sometimes." We knelt together, our fingers brushing against the bright, round fruits. In that mundane moment, hope shimmered between us. A gentle reminder that a simple act of kindness could spark calm amidst the storm. The stranger's grip on my shoulder loosened, his gaze flickering between us. I wondered what he made of this instance of humanity. Did he share the same understanding of universal truth, that connections could be forged in the smallest of gestures? I took a moment longer to assist the lady, and as we lifted the basket back upright, I caught a glimpse of Jamie on the other side of the street, his expression etched with concern. "Where did you go?" he called out, his voice strained against the backdrop of tension. I felt a pang of guilt, torn between the urgent world behind me and the serene connection I discovered in the woman's eyes. I waved back at Jamie, letting him know I was okay, even when I wasn't quite sure how I felt anymore. As I rejoined the throng of people, confusion surged again. The crowd was recovering, yet I remained restless. The stranger watched from a distance, and an unexpected ripple of unease unfurled in my gut when I spotted the fleeting figure of the rabbit darting past again. This time it paused, as if beckoning me to follow. "Wait," I shouted, pointing. A few people turned, bewildered by my sudden outburst. But as they shifted their gaze, the rabbit vanished yet again. A wave of disappointment crashed over me, only to be replaced by an insatiable curiosity. "Come on," my companion urged, motioning for me to join him as he began to chase after the retreating sandwich of glimmering fur and energy. I hesitated, my heart racing at the thrill of the chase and the knowledge I was stepping away from the safety of the familiar once more. But deep down, I was aware of the stakes I was playing with. The weight of the team's spirit rested on my shoulders. The fatigue of rejection clung to me like a shadow. I couldn't afford to lose hope again, yet here I was, drawn into an extraordinary chase fueled by absurdity. Side by side with the stranger, adrenaline thrummed through my bloodstream. We moved through alleyways and bustling streets, the city thrumming with life around us as we blurred by. Each corner we turned deepened the sense of adventure, but with it came an undeniable resolve that something whispered under the surface this rabbit was leading us toward something vital, yet elusive. Suddenly, the stranger stopped near a café, the air thick with warmth and the aroma of fresh pastries. He turned to face me, his expression a mix of urgency and intent. "You have to trust this," he said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial tone. "This isn't just a game. It's everything." "What do you mean?" My heart raced, my mind teetering on the precipice of logic and fantasy. "I can show you the way to your dreams." His gaze bore into mine, sending ripples of longing surging through me. But uncertainty intertwined with an inexplicable allure. Before I could respond, he spun, pointing toward the entrance of the café. "There," he declared triumphantly. Just as I followed his gaze, a figure stepped out into the dia-face that tugged at the very fabric of my memory. It was someone I hadn't seen in years, someone whose return would shatter the foundations of my reality. My heart sank, caught in a web of disbelief as the stranger I'd just met took a step closer, caught in the collision of fate that I felt inching ever closer. As he turned back to me, a storm brewing behind those eyes, I knew nothing would ever be the same. The world around me faded as I stood frozen, my gaze locked on the figure emerging from the café. Dust motes floated lazily in the sunlight, yet an electric tension coursed through the air, a premonition that enveloped the moment with heavy significance. My heart raced, tension pulling my features taut as recognition crashed over me like a wave. It was Lily, my childhood best friend, the girl who had taken my secrets and dreams along with her when her family had moved away without a word. Memories flooded back, of shared laughter under the summer sun, of whispered dreams and promises of forever, only to be shattered by time and distance. She appeared older, yet somehow untouched by the years. The same spark in her eyes that once ignited our adventures now flickered with uncertainty. "Lily?" I managed to say, my voice slipping through the cracks of disbelief. Her eyes widened, mirroring my shock, moments stretching between us filled with unsaid words and unresolved feelings. Just as I took a step forward, prepared to bridge the distance, the stranger beside me shifted, his presence suddenly more profound than before. "Do you remember when I said this is everything?" His voice was a low murmur, almost drowned out by the hum of the city surrounding us. Everything starts to shift when you confront the past. What do you mean? My mind was racing, trying to fuse the parts of my emotional landscape into something coherent. Lily's return was a puzzle I had not expected, and the edges were sharp, cutting deeper than I had anticipated before he could respond. The cacophony of the city swelled as a new commotion rose from the café. Jamie, still searching for me, appeared out of the crowd, eyes darting as he spotted my frozen form. His presence anchored me, yet uncertainty brushed against my skin, igniting an internal struggle. I wanted to embrace Jamie, to let him soothe the storm within me, but Lily's return beckoned me like a siren. Lily took a hesitant step toward me, vulnerable and uncertain. "I didn't expect to see you here, after all this time," she said, her voice trembling slightly, a thread of apprehension woven beneath the surface. I started, but words escaped me. How do you encapsulate years of lost connection, of unanswered questions? Suddenly, the stranger interjected, glancing between us as if he sensed the tides turning. "You both have unfinished business," he spoke with quiet intensity. "The threads that bind you are tangled, and it's time to unravel them together." "Unfinished business?" Jamie echoed, confusion seeping into his tone. The warmth of his concern contrasted sharply with the cold uncertainty that clung to the air. "You don't understand," I snapped, torn between the past and present. "Lily and we were close, but time took her away." "And you never tried to find me?" she challenged, the hint of hurt lacing her words. The air thickened with tension, as our unspoken thoughts swirled in a maelstrom around us. Just as the storm began to gather strength, the stranger moved forward, breaking the charged atmosphere with words that were alternately warm and sharp. "Perhaps the storm is what you need to face. You can't run from it. You've been summoned back for a reason." A hush fell over us as those last words hung in the air, and an unexpected ding resonated from the café's door chime, drawing our attention. An elderly man emerged, scanning the crowd with weary eyes. He looked almost familiar, like a phantom from another life. Something in his gaze caught my breath, the flicker of recognition igniting a flare of memories long since buried. "What if Lily started?" Her voice softer now, a tremor of fear and hope coiling through her words. "What if he knows? What if he's the reason I came back?" The stranger nodded slowly, a knowing smile creeping across his lips. "The threads are all connected, entwined in ways you cannot yet understand. Embrace the connections, no matter how painful or beautiful." Before I could process his implications, the elderly man stepped forward. "I've searched for you," he said, his gravelly voice slicing through the air with years of gravity. "I've waited so long to tell you the truth." The truth. The word hung precariously as I felt my legs grow weak, a tremor racing through me. With each beat of my heart, something primal whispered that what followed would change everything: me past, my future, and the very fabric of who I thought I was. Jamie's hand wrapped around my arm, grounding me as I braced for the revelation that could uproot everything I believed. The man raised a finger, trembling yet fierce with purpose. "You won't believe what has been hidden from you all along." And in that moment, standing on the precipice of the past and the unknown, I felt time stretch infinitely, binding us together in this fragile space. I realized I wasn't prepared for what lay ahead, and perhaps I didn't want to be. The words lingered in the air like a tightly wound rope, poised to snap. Everyone was staring, the weight of anticipation drawing us closer together and yet somehow widening the void between us. I wanted to scream, to cry out that I wasn't ready, that I couldn't bear the truth of what had been hidden from me. But Jamie's grip on my arm didn't waver. His silent strength became my lifeline. "Please," Lily said, her voice barely a whisper. "What do you mean by the truth?" The elderly man's gaze shifted between the three of us, an unsettling calm washing over his features. "Your lives have been stitched together by threads of history, and it's time for you to learn why. It's about your parents, Lily, and yours too." His gaze landed on me, each syllable digging deeper. A rush of emotions overwhelmed me: fear, confusion, and a hint of anger. I felt as if I were standing at the edge of a cliff with no clear ground beneath my feet. My mind clawed for answers, desperate to understand what had tied our fates together while I was left oblivious. "Why do you know this?" I asked, struggling to maintain control of my voice. "Who are you?" "I am someone who knew both your families," he replied, a tremble in his voice. I watched as the past repainted itself with each day that passed. "When your parents moved away, it was to protect you both from a history that burdened them. But now, it's time for you two to understand." Jamie pulled me closer, his warmth a stark contrast to the icy dread coursing through me. "Whatever it is you can tell us. We can handle this." His voice was steady, but I sensed the slight quivering beneath the surface, revealing his own unease that "I know you may not believe me, but you've both been living under a shadow cast by the past," he continued, his voice softening. "There are secrets about your families, a connection that transcends the years apart. It's perhaps more than you could fathom." Pain gnawed at the edges of my mind, pulling me back to moments I thought had faded into memories. There were stories my mother whispered late at night, but I'd always brushed them away as mere figments of her imagination. My heart hammered violently in my chest as I glanced at Lily, the unspoken vulnerability lining her face. The years had aged us differently, yet the bond we once shared crackled in the air, desperate for acknowledgement. "Why can't you just tell us?" I begged. "What are you waiting for?" The man hesitated, a third layer of emotion layering on top of fear. Sadness. "Because some truths have to be unearthed carefully. It's not just your past. It's about your futures. And the choices you make now could change everything." "What choices?" Lily squared her shoulders defiantly, refusing to back down. The fire in her eyes mirrored the anger curling in my chest. It was a testament to the care and passion ingrained in our friendship, however fragmented it might be. Suddenly, the stranger seemed to shift, a weighty pause falling across us before he spoke again, his voice low and riddled with gravity. "I've come to tell you about the inheritance your families left you, the powerful legacy entwined in the soccer teams your parents once dreamed of building together. You stand on the edge of something monumental, but you must confront your past to embrace your future." Before I could fully comprehend his words, a cacophony erupted from the café once again. A young girl, perhaps no older than 6, bounded outside, her golden curls bouncing with infectious glee. She clutched a soccer ball almost as big as herself and ran towards us, laughter bubbling forth. The stark contrast between her innocence and the heaviness of our gathering sent a jolt through me. "What do you think you're waiting for?" she called, her exuberance breaking through the tension like sunlight piercing fog. "Come play with me." For a moment, the space around us sparkled with her unfiltered joy, a reminder of what it meant to be free and untouched by the complexities of adult life. My heart ached. The girl kept me grounded, a fleeting reminder of simpler times. As I watched her begin an impromptu game with a couple of passers-by, I felt something shift within. For the first time, uncertainty was tempered by a sliver of hope. But just as quickly, dread crept back to taunt me. The elderly man cleared his throat. "You both need to decide, will you confront what has been hidden, or turn away and pretend it doesn't matter?" The choice loomed heavier than the revelations yet to be spoken, and as I looked back at Lily, I sensed her heart beating in rhythm with mine, our souls longing for the same answers, even if they would shatter the remnants of our pasts. "Let's play," I finally whispered, my heart racing with fervor. "Let's play for everything that's been stolen from us." But before we could step forward, the stranger reached out, his palm pressing against my shoulder. "Be careful what you wish for. Sometimes the truth comes at a cost." And as his words echoed like a farewell, the joyous laughter from the young girl faded into the background as shadows deepened, a weight that tethered my heart to a truth yet to be unearthed. The wind howled, carrying fleeting whispers of laughter and memories of innocence, teasing my mind as I turned back to the elderly man. His words hung like a cloud over me, dark and foreboding. It felt outrageous to even consider stepping into the waters of our shared past. Yet the aspects of my life, the echoes of childhood laughter in the park, the scent of grass after rain beckoned me from a distant shore. "Shouldn't you want to know, though?" Jamie challenged quietly, squeezing my hand tighter, his voice tinged with disbelief. Shouldn't we want to know? This isn't just some fairy tale, this is about our families. I disliked the way he was right, the knot in my throat tightening. Stepping closer to Lily, I could feel our uncertainty morph into something more tangible, the thrum of fate pulling us together. As if we had been sewn into a grand tapestry, where we only saw fragments of the whole. Of course I want to know. I blurted out, the anguish in my voice spilling over. But what if it destroys everything we're trying to rebuild? What if it's too much? Then we face it, Lily said, her determination shining through the cracks of her own fear. Together, like we always have. In that moment, the girl's joyful laughter washed over us once more, an innocent silliness that made my heart ache for what once was. I glanced back at her, still wrapping her tiny fingers around the oversized soccer ball, inviting others to join in. She was far too young to understand burdens, complexities, or histories woven in shades of gray, too young to be haunted by choices that lay ahead. I turned my gaze back to the stranger. So, what's the legacy you're talking about? He moved towards the edge of the café, away from our circle, casting his gaze outside as though he were searching for what lay beyond. Your parents, they were part of something significant. Something that involved not just soccer but an idyllic community they wanted to build. There were promises made, dreams intertwined, and also shadows. He glanced at us, deep wrinkles settling into his features as he spoke, eyes revealing years of witnessing secrets unravel. What kind of shadows? Lily pressed, her voice quivering beneath a layer of fury and fear. There were debts, broken promises, and something dark that forced your families apart. But amidst that darkness there was a gift. Something they hoped would unite you both again. If ever faced with the truth, he said, his voice dipping to a near whisper, taking an air of reverence. An opportunity to return to where it all began if you're willing to take that leap. A heaviness settled in my stomach at the thought. The idea of an empire rooted in something as earnest as soccer felt surreal. Yet along with that glimmer of ambition came the ache of unhealed scars, the memory of tears late at night, and the consequences of every decision I had tried to quell. The world kept turning around to strangers passing under muted halos of streetlights, with murmurs of life blending with the lingering aroma of baked goods. I found a bittersweet comfort in Jamie and Lily's presence. We were architects of our destiny, though so many walls were built from things unseen. Is it even possible? I asked, voice trembling with uncertainty. After everything? I believe it is, Jamie said resolutely, determination sparking in his eyes. Sometimes our past is the key to the future we've always dreamed of. Maybe we owe it to ourselves to try. Then let's start by understanding what we're dealing with, Lily urged. Together, just as resolve began to settle upon us, the man reached into his coat, releasing a yellowed envelope. This contains the names and locations of those involved. There is danger, yes, but I believe there's hope. You just have to be willing to accept the risk. My pulse quickened as I accepted the envelope, its weight heavy in my palm, the paper almost fragile, like a secret begging to be unfolded. But deep down, dread began weaving through me. A growing apprehension that perhaps opening this envelope might lead to revelations I might not be ready for. I faltered, emotion welling in my throat. Voices around us grew quieter. Yet the bustling cafe didn't seem to realize our moment was eclipsed by monumental possibility. Suddenly, a scream pierced the air, sharp and desperate. The laughter and joy turned dark as a figure stumbled past us, clutching their side, a crimson stain beginning to spread across the fabric of their shirt. The little girl froze in horror, her soccer ball rolling away and landing at my feet. Chaos erupted. Adrenaline rushed through me, pounding in my ears as I turned back to look at Jamie and Lily. Their eyes, wide with shock, reflected every fear that danced within me. "Call for an ambulance," Jamie shouted, darting towards the door, while Lily stood frozen, her hand pressed against her mouth in disbelief. I felt that parcel in my hands grow heavier, a symbol not just of hope but a ticking clock. We had chosen to edge closer to the truth of our past, and now history screamed its reminder. Not all battles are fought on the field, as sirens wailed in the distance. The reality of our mission to unearth the legacy of our families dawned on me painfully. The past was alive and restless, and just beyond our grasp. We didn't yet know the cost of what lay ahead. The rush of sirens grew louder, drowning out the remnants of laughter, muting the small joys of the café. All color bled from the world as panic surged, rippling through the gathered crowd. I gripped the envelope tighter, its edges biting into my palm. Anxiety coiled around my heart, constricting my breath. "Please," I urged Lily, breaking from my stupor. "We need to help." My voice trembled as I looked to her, hoping she could find the strength I felt slipping away. "Right," she replied, her voice steadying in the chaos. She rushed to the nearest table, where an elderly woman sat trembling, her hands fidgeting nervously around an untouched cup of coffee. "You stay with her," Lily commanded, turning to me. "I'll check on him." Before I could reply, she dashed off, weaving through the throng of shocked patrons. My gaze flitted back to Jamie, who was already on the phone, his expression etched with worry as he relayed the urgent need for help. I felt stranded amid the tumult, the envelope still in my grip. Whispering secrets I dared not yet face, I knelt beside the figure crumpled on the ground, a young man, perhaps just a year or two older than me. His ashen face was smeared with both shock and pain, but I could see the flicker of life in his eyes. A long, jagged gash adorned his side, staining the fabric of his shirt, a reflection of the chaos we'd stumbled into. "Hey," I murmured, trying to instill some sense of comfort in the frantic moment. "You're going to be okay. Help is on the way." I tried to reassure both him and myself. He grimaced but managed to nod slightly, his eyes drifting shut as the adrenaline faded, the pain intensifying in its wake. "It wasn't supposed to be here tonight," he sputtered, his voice strained. I just wanted one last game. My heart sank at his words. "Just hold on. You're going to make it. Just keep talking to me." What game? I needed any distraction, something to pull him from the dark abyss threatening to swallow him whole. "Picking a team," he whispered. "I wanted to show them I could still play." His voice faltered as the sirens drew closer, a haunting counterpoint to his fading bravado. I felt a weight settle over, meant only for him but for the echoes of our shared history that tinged everything around us. Moments passed like shadows, with Lily and Jamie attending to him in a flurry of breath and urgency. If it hadn't been for Jamie's orders for others to step back, I feared the crowd's curiosity might suffocate the very life we were trying to save. Then, from behind the chaos, something glimmered. I caught sight of the little girl with the soccer ball. She was standing frozen near the door, eyes wide and fearful, each heartbeat punctuated by the silence of the unfolding emergency. For an instant, our eyes met, and I could see the flicker of innocence tainted by misunderstanding. With every ounce of resolve, I propelled myself toward her. "Hey, it's all right," I said softly, kneeling to her level. "Can you tell me your name?" "Emily," she whispered, her voice wavering as she curled her little fingers around the ball that had rolled away. Through her shock, I sensed a glimmer of understanding, the flicker of a child who had known nothing but joy until that moment. "Emily, I need you to do something for me. Okay?" I asked, urgency building within my chest. "Can you go over to that table?" I pointed to where Lily was now hunched over the injured man, hands applying pressure to the wound. "Can you get help? Maybe talk to someone and keep them nearby? They'll stay here and help your friend. I promise." She hesitated but, after a beat, nodded vigorously. Caught in the currents of her innocence, I felt my heart swell with pride as she ran off, determination and fear spurring her onward. Just as she turned the corner out the door, I felt a tug at my sleeve. I looked back to find an elderly man, the cafe owner, standing nearby with a weary expression that seemed to carry its own storms. He approached cautiously, his hands trembling almost imperceptibly. I have some supplies in the back," he stammered, glancing around nervously at the scene unfolding. Before him, I was a medic during the war. "Thank you." My words came out almost in a gasp. The genuine offer struck a chord, a flicker of kindness amidst the upheaval as he dashed away. Another wave of chaos began to ripple through the crowd. Murmured questioning, hushed whispers about the qualities of life, and fears of what lay beyond. In those moments, I remembered the stories of our parents, how they had fought against enemies whose shrouded struggles wove shadows over their dreams. And there it was again. The paralyzing weight of that envelope in my pocket, a reminder that history was still pulling at the seams of our reality. For if the past held its secrets like a tightly closed fist, intermixed with nightmares and half-spoken dreams, what could possibly lie ahead once those secrets unraveled? Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from within the cafe's shadows. The sound of glass shattering sent shockwaves through my heart, robbing me of breath. I turned to Jamie, whose expression had shifted from concern to alarm, eyes wide like saucers. "Someone's coming," he shouted as he positioned himself protectively between the entrance and the young man on the floor. "Call for backup." A crowd began to ripple in fear, a swirl of panic and confusion where hope had just begun to take root. Yet even amidst the terror, the thought of the envelope, of the lives entwined within it, hovered insistently at the periphery of my thoughts, fighting against the noise. The man who had offered the envelope seemed to embody both prophecy and warning. In trying to unveil the truth about our past, had we inadvertently placed ourselves back in the shadows, crossing into dangers unseen? Then, like a cruel twist of fate, the door burst open, and the silhouette of a figure emerged, bringing with it both mystery and dread. Immediately, a sense of foreboding washed over the cafe, intensifying the imbalance between hope and despair. In that moment, I realized our journey to uncover the legacy ahead was about to delve deeper than any of us ever intended, revealing dangers not just within the puzzle of our past, but right here, now in our present. The figure stepped into the cafe, draped in shadows, casting an imposing presence that immediately commanded attention. The flash of a familiar face sent my heart plummeting into an abyss I hadn't acknowledged until that very moment. It was Felix, a name I'd tried to forget, a boy I had once called friend, who had transformed into something else altogether. Instinctively, my stomach twisted in knots as the memories latched on, tightening their grip around my chest. "Felix," I breathed, uncertain whether to leap forward or retreat. "What are you doing here?" He scanned the room, his expression unreadable, until his eyes landed on me, a flicker of recognition briefly igniting before shifting into something more sinister. Well, he said, his voice smooth as silk yet jagged as glass. "Looks like the past has a way of catching up." Jamie stepped forward, trying to shield the injured man from Felix's calculating gaze. "This isn't the time for games, Felix. Get out." But he ignored the warning, moving closer, his footfalls deliberate. "You don't understand the game we're all playing, do you? It's bigger than any of us." As he spoke, I felt the room constrict around me, the air thick with unspoken truths and unresolved tensions. The older man who had rushed to fetch supplies paused at Felix's entry, taking a step back, and the elderly woman I had been attending to turned her gaze away, evading the storm brewing in front of us. "Let me help," Felix continued, an unsettling brilliance flashing in his eyes. "I know things you don't." "Things about what?" I shot back, frustration bubbling within me, while fear flickered in the periphery. "You don't belong here. Not now." "Maybe not," he conceded, tilting his head slightly, "but this is where I am. And it seems you're still bound to your peers nonetheless. I've come to offer a choice." Behind him, the sound of sirens continued to wail, blending with the palpable tension of the cafe. I knew my heart was betraying me as it raced, competing against the chaotic beat of uncertainty. Why had he come? What did he want from me, from us? Felix's voice rose above the clamor, and his tone changed, steeped now in persuasion. "You're at a crossroads, you know. The team you desperately want to build? You need resources. You need backing. I can give that to you." Anger ignited within me. "At what cost?" With a sly smile curling his lips, he gestured toward the injured young man. "See? Just like him, you're trying to save something fragile. But this isn't just about healing, this is about power, about establishing something that can last longer than these fleeting moments of adrenaline." I felt the weight of his words seep into my bones, mingling with the dread festering in my gut. He was right. Desperation danced dangerously close to the edge of our moments. I glanced over at Jamie, whose brow was furrowed in confusion and fear. Could we really trust Felix? What strings would he pull to help us? I want barter lives for ambition. Felix, I declared, my anger surging to the surface, seemingly bright against the darkness cogitating in the air. Not barterange investing, he countered smoothly. Sometimes you have to gamble with a little wisdom to achieve what you truly want. And believe me, you're going to want to make choices that mattered at SFONQ. The woman by the window stirred, her trembling hand reaching for her forgotten coffee cup, and I couldn't help but think of Emily, how she was out there, perhaps struggling to understand the weight of our dialogue as she fought to help. But Felix was relentless, the predator backlit by ambition, lunging into the light of the moment. You can build whatever it is you desire if you let me help. But ignore me, and you will watch everyone in this café crumble before your eyes. How had we arrived at this dire intersection? Just when we had begun to gather hope, a fleeting escape amidst calamity threw shadows upon our fragile efforts. Before I could compose a response, the door flew open again, and Emily rushed inside, her small frame vibrating with a mix of fear and determination. She had brought a group of people with her fellow patrons, eyes wide with concern. My heart leaped, a flicker of hope igniting. Let them help, I urged, pointing toward the paramedics now entering. They were trained and ready, their faces carrying the weight of urgency, barely sparing Felix a glance. Perhaps this is just the right distraction then, Felix murmured, his eyes glinting with mischief. There are always choices, and remember, not everyone sees victory the same. This galaxy of chaos we inhabit? It only deepens shadows. My resolve steadied against his words. And, despite the chaos that reignited all around us, I felt an ember of determination grow within. Each life mattered, each moment a thread woven into this tangled narrative. But as the crowd began to part for the paramedics, and they moved to the injured man, Felix's voice rose, in a whisper laced with a taunt. Just know, Tess, this isn't over. The game has only just begun, and he'll always be watching. The weight of his presence lingered in the air, coiling around my thoughts as the paramedics began their delicate work, and the looming promise of more trials loomed ever closer. I had to push past the fears, focus on saving what remained. But even as the chaos reigned, I found myself wondering, what would the cost of our choices turn out to be? And could we truly navigate the stakes Felix was offering before it consumed us all? As the world around me descended back into that calm and chaotic urgency, I cast my eyes toward the enveloping darkness, the truths it held starting to unravel like threads in a tapestry, a twist of fate waiting to pull at the seams. The moments that followed Felix's haunting declaration felt like shards of glass swirling in my mind. The café buzzed with the fervor of the paramedics, their focused voices cutting through the thick tension that still hung in the air. Every try to breathe deeply felt heavy, weighted down by the stakes Felix had introduced into our fragile sanctuary. Will he be all right? Emily asked, her voice quavering as she watched the medics work on the injured man. Her concern radiated from her, but when her eyes met mine, I saw a flicker of something else: fear. Fear that a journey we had just begun could precipitate to catastrophe at any moment. I hope so, I replied, forcing the words out despite the dread curling in my stomach. I was never one to back down from a challenge, but reality seemed to demand a sacrifice I wasn't ready to make. As the wounded man was carefully wheeled away, I could feel the inklings of progress, yet the shadow of Felix loomed larger than ever. I needed clarity. Where he promised resources, I was left with deep suspicion. Could he genuinely help us? Or was he merely baiting us into deeper waters? Stay close, Jamie instructed, breaking through my chaos. She was fierce and steadfast, the kind of grounding force that every struggling soul needed. We can't lose anyone else, Tess. Not now. The atmosphere around us was electric, but amidst the intermittent chaos, small gestures of kindness began to unfold. A barista, whose name I didn't know, quietly began bringing cups of water to those of us standing by, checking to see if we were all okay. It was a simple act, yet it sparked warmth through my veins, renewing the sense of camaraderie that had built over this past chaotic evening. "Oh, you really think we can do this?" Emily asked, her face half buried in her shaking hands. If he's right, if we have to make a choice like that, I didn't want to answer. What did I know about the kind of choices Felix was presenting? but I couldn't ignore the pit in my heart. I think the best ones come when we least expect it, I finally replied, trying to sound more assured than I felt. A soft laugh escaped Jamie, a sound that felt unfamiliar against the noisy backdrop. Well, then we need to make some unpredictable choices of our own. We need a plan. Right, I nodded, forcing myself to focus on immediate survival instead of the twisting uncertainties of the future. We couldn't concede to despair. Not after everything we had built together. We can't let Felix dictate the way this ends. Well, figure it out. The flashes of lights from outside the cafe began illuminating the dim interior, illuminating the faces of people who had been shaking through the darkness just minutes prior. The community was forming again, piecing together in this chaotic patchwork of humanity. Suddenly, the door swung open once more, sending another gust of frigid air through the room, a distinct shift cutting through the uncomfortable warmth we had attempted to build. Drawn by the noise, I turned my attention towards the entrance, heart lurching. What now? A group of people, an eclectic mix of determined faces flooded in, briefly blocking my view of the surroundings. Despite the icy air that rushed in with them, a spontaneous sense of energy ignited within me. They gathered around the cafe, surveying the scene with concern but also resolved. We heard about the accident. One of them said, a woman draped in a vibrant scarf that contrasted sharply with the dull dreariness of our circumstances. We're here to help. Her words. A spark of hope ignited. Perhaps Felix wasn't the only player in this game. I felt the adrenaline of the fight flow back into my veins. Loss and confusion could propel goodwill and strength if we used it wisely. But as I glanced back at the doorway, still firmly imbued with uncertainty, something caught my eye. Felix stood outside, smiling, his demeanor a mix of a cat that had caught the canary and a player who reveled in the game's unpredictability. In that moment a decision flashed in my mind. This wasn't just about us fighting for our lives. It was about wresting the narrative back from Felix's grasp. I felt a rush of determination pour through me. I wasn't going to let darkness define our journey. But just as I prepared to rally everyone around me, the very air shifted. A loud crash echoed from the alley outside, followed by a thud that resonated through us like distant thunder. My heart froze. It felt like there was more at play than the subtle game of calculation that Felix had drawn us into, and just before I could process the gravity of this sudden disturbance, a shadow submerged into the cafe, revealing itself with a startling clarity. It was a young boy, no older than 10, clutching a worn-out soccer ball, tears streaming down his cheeks. His eyes searched desperately amidst the familiar faces, his voice trembling as he cried, "Help! Help! My brother, he's hurt." And as those words struck through the ambience, the gravity of the moment collapsed around me. Layers of fears, truths, and choices surged together in a wild, chaotic storm, spinning everything into complete disarray. In that instant, the stakes escalated beyond my comprehension. Each life depended on our choices, and now, we were bound not only to our past tragedies, but to new ones unfolding before our eyes. Was this what Felix predicted? Would I be forced to reckon with the ultimate decision between ambition, sacrifice, and the lives of those who needed us most? As Felix lingered just outside, a wicked glint in his eye, I understood that our journey had just taken a darker turn, one that would test every fiber of our resolve. The boy's cries pierced through my hazy confusion, sending electric shockwaves across the cafe. It was as if the world had shifted beneath my feet, rearranging everything I thought I knew. I felt the urgency of his plea clawing at my insides. My heartbeat thundered in my ears as I turned to see the faces around me, each one mirroring a complex mixture of shock and determination. "Tess," Jamie called, pulling me back from the encroaching panic. "What do we do?" I swallowed hard, fighting against the turmoil swirling within me. "We need to go outside. We need to help him." I hardly recognized my voice. It was a strange blend of fear and resolve as we moved instinctively towards the exit. I met Emily's gaze and saw a flicker of mutual understanding. Together, we stepped into the chill of the night, letting the urgency of the moment push us forward despite the heaviness that lingered in the air. The alley was bathed in the sickly neon glow of the cafe sign, and as my eyes adjusted, I could see more clearly a cluster of people had gathered around a young boy, their expressions carved in concern. The injured boy lay crumpled on the cold pavement, hands pressed against his leg, blood seeping through the fingers, creating a small puddle that glimmered ominously in the light. What happened? I knelt beside the boy, trying to keep my voice steady, even as dread gnawed at me. Can you tell me where it hurts? I wanted to offer comfort, yet the weight of gravity loomed. My brother. He fell while we were playing. He can't move. The boy's voice trembled, his small frame shaking from panic mixed with the frigid air. Don't worry, we're going to help him. I reassured him, glancing at the others who had spilled out of the café behind us. Jessica, a nurse from the community, had stepped forward, her expression shifting into one of quiet resolve as she assessed the situation. Everyone else, step back, she ordered, her commanding tone hitting a note of authority. I felt a murmur of hope twitch within me. We weren't alone in this, not another catastrophe to face without support. She began directing bystanders, prepping them for what might be a tense wait for help. The collective effort infused the atmosphere with a sense of urgency. Each minute feeling like an eternity. I turned back to the boys, their faces bathed in shadows, eyes wide with fear. What's your name? I focused on the younger sibling, hoping to anchor him in this storm. Leo, he whispered, wiping his tears with a grimy sleeve. They were playing He Can't Feel Anything. Leo, listen to me, I said, grasping his small hand in mine, steadying it with my own. Stay with us. We are here to keep you safe. Can you tell me your brother's name? Tommy, he replied, a fresh wave of tears emerging, but he squeezed my hand tighter. In that moment, I saw the resilience of a brother's love spilling over into the chaos surrounding us. That moment, I caught sight of Felix again, lurking at the edge of the alley, an amused smile crossing his features. Unable to predict the intention behind that expression, it made my skin crawl. Was he reveling in the chaos, anticipating our every move? If this moment was part of his grand design, he was going to need a much larger chessboard. Resentment swelled inside me. This wasn't a game anymore. These were lives at stake, and I wouldn't stand idly by while he played his wicked hand. Help is coming, Leo. We're going to take care of your brother. I promise, I said, my voice steadying in the face of rising terror. But as I spoke those words, an unforeseen twist unfurled before our eyes. There was a faint groan from behind us, a shifting in the shadows. Then Tommy shifted slightly, a gasp escaping his lips, as panic intertwined with a glimmer of clarity returned to his eyes. What? He stammered, confusion clouding his features as he blinked against the light. Tommy, stay still, Jessica cautioned, her hands moving with care, but the sudden consciousness had ignited a chaotic spark among us. My heart raced with the implications. Was he okay? How much longer until help arrived? And just as hope flickered, through the air, the sound of sirens wailed in the distance. Yet, in stark contrast to the promise of arrival, a low rumble vibrated beneath our feet, an unmistakable sign of something greater, a storm not merely brewing but imminent. The café, with its camaraderie and warmth, felt light years away. The chaos of the alley tugged at the seams of fear that I was trying to stitch together. I glanced back at Felix, his expression now all too familiar, anticipation mixed with something darker. Was he pushing me to a point of decision, forcing choices I wasn't ready to make? In that moment, I realized the stakes could skyrocket beyond anything I had prepared for. Because now it wasn't just a matter of surviving. We were tasked with protecting the very lives seeking to stitch themselves back into the fabric of hope in an unforgiving world. And as I knelt beside Tommy and Leo, something inside me ignited a relentless desire to reclaim not just our journey, but our power to change its trajectory. As the sirens neared, I caught a glimpse of shadows moving deeper into the alley, the source of that rumble, barely discernible beneath the din of chaos, and with that, I knew the darkness was only just beginning to unfurl. The chaos of the alley was an echo of my internal struggle, and as the sounds of sirens pierced the heavy atmosphere, the weight of each moment pressed down upon me like a leaden shroud. The shadows deepened, curling around the edges of our reality, threatening to consume everything we fought to protect. I could see Jamie and Lily standing beside me, their expressions a mix of resolve and fear, their grounding presence urging me to focus. "Stay with me, Tommy," I whispered, kneeling beside the injured boy sprawled on the cold pavement, his face pale and grimacing. If I could keep him anchored amid the tumult, perhaps we might save more than just his life. Behind me, Leo clutched my hand tightly, his small fingers trembling. I could feel the pulse of fear coursing through him, mirroring the anxiety that clawed at my own heart. "Help is on the way, I promise," I repeated, trying to summon the confidence I didn't quite feel. Moments stretched into an agonizing infinity as the shadows coiled closer, edges blurring with uncertainty. The sirens grew louder, but a sense of foreboding held me captive, twisting together the fates of the young boys and mine in a heart-wrenching knot. And then it happened. A wave of pressure swept through the alley, as if the universe itself tilted in recognition of the imminent storm. A sudden boom of thunder crackled above, and the ground shuddered once more, amplifying the panic bubbling just beneath the surface. But a flicker of light caught my eye, and the world seemed to slow. I turned instinctively toward it, catching my breath as I saw a few figures edging their way through the throng of people surrounding us. Wearing uniforms with flashes of red and blue, the paramedics stepping in with purpose. "Step aside. We need space," someone shouted, urgency slicing through the panic. I felt a rush of relief, but it was quickly overshadowed by dread creeping in again. Would it be enough? Could they help Tommy in time? In that instant, just on the edge of my consciousness, I felt Felix's presence lurking like a storm cloud on the horizon, an ever-watchful eye, eager to intervene when the stakes were at their highest. He had already pushed me into a corner of chaos layered with desperation, but his intentions were shrouded in darkness. Each step I'd taken felt like a calculated move on his part. "Tommy, we're going to take care of you. Okay?" A paramedic knelt beside him, her voice unwavering, tinged with concern and care that spread like light across the dark. I watched as they assessed the situation, glancing briefly back at me, an acknowledgement that we all shared this burden, the weight of life and death hanging delicately between us. Suddenly, a familiar voice pierced through, an echo of buried memories surging forward. "Why are you here now?" Froze me in place. I turned back, eyes widening as I saw Lily make her way into the throng of paramedics. Her expression resolute yet laced with confusion, as if she had finally awakened from a long, troubling dream. But her gaze was focused on me, drawing upon strength I had once thought lost. "Find a way to the truth," she murmured, words just for me, her determination igniting something deep within. "Well, face whatever comes together." In that instant, the tendrils of uncertainty began to unravel. The connection between us, the echoes of our shared past, seemed to lift, granting me clarity amid the chaos. I fought against the suffocating weight of doubt coursing through me and grasped onto hope, reaching a hand out toward Lily. We were stitching ourselves back together against the backdrop of all that had been lost. But then, like a swift stab of fate, it hit me, a sharp agony I wasn't prepared for. It was Felix, moving through the crowd, casual as a breeze, a smirk flickering around the edges of his lips. He wasn't merely watching. He was waiting for us to falter, to make the choice he knew would have to make, the looming darkness threading around us like a sinister web. His voice cut through me again, low and chilling. "You cannot escape this. You of all people should recognize the power in wielding a choice." The words twisted like shards of glass, prickling at the edges of my resolve, echoing the internal war raging within me. "Stop," I spat, the heat of anger crystallizing in my voice. "This isn't your game, Felix. This isn't a bargaining table. You can't use lives as leverage." My heart pounded fiercely, igniting courage against the swirl of shadows, realizing the truth now lay before me. Albeit painful, its potency surged, driven by fear and resolve. Tommy groaned again, a sound caught between pain and confusion, and hearing it twisted a knife deep in my chest. Suddenly, clarity crackled through me. Purpose emerged, born from both fear of loss and the unyielding hope preserved within each moment. "Let the past guide us from here on out," I found myself declaring, weaving the promise of connection into every syllable. "We will create something stronger, and together we can turn hope into a legacy." It was as if a collective breath held the alley captive, The determination surged within every person gathered me friends, the strangers who had rushed in, all bonded by the struggle against the unknown. And in that poignant moment, Tommy's eyes met mine and I realized his breathing had steadied as serenity washed over him. The paramedics worked quickly beside him, their presence a harbinger of hope. Together we would overcome. The sirens blended into an anthem of promise as light began to shine through the darkness we'd faced. As I turned back toward Felix, the shadows trembled, but a thread of strength surged alongside it, the decision looming on the precipice of clarity and determination. "I don't need your choices anymore," I said firmly, a creed of resilience encapsulating me. "I choose compassion. I choose the bonds that bind us together, no matter how tangled they might be. We will rise." The darkness around us began to wane, the pulse of hope radiating through the space, weaving a comforting embrace, guiding Tommy back from the brink. As Felix's figure faded into the distances, I felt an overwhelming sense of liberation envelop me. We were more than our past, more than just the whispers of uncertainty. We had become the architects of a new narrative, one stitched together by courage and community, turning painful threads into a tapestry of triumph. And just like that, light seeped through the cracks of our journey, a flame igniting within us, a reminder that bonds, forged through trials, could illuminate even the darkest paths. Together, I whispered, a silent vow to our shared future that stretched before us like an infinite field, promising with each step a chance to rediscover the beauty of hope as the world moved forward. I finally understood. Our legacy awaited, shimmering on the horizon, begging us to chase it into the dawn. Together we would rise, always together. The final words resonated like a long-forgotten echo, entwining our hearts into the fabric of eternity.